You're listening to the Caramel Apples Podcast, the show that brings you a retro vibe, both crunchy and sweet, with your hosts, Kennedy Rizzo and Cooper Lee. Hey, hey, hey! So are you ready for this week's Orchard Trek Retro Coop?
I am.
Great, because we've got an exciting throwback treat to dive into to whet our ever-loving caramel apples appetite. So this will be an exciting blast from the past that will easily give us all the feels that naturally springs from deep, warm nostalgia.
Truly. Who cannot like and dial up warm feelings when talking about the memorable retro 70s cartoon, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids? This live animated TV series was the genius and talented brainchild of the even more famous comedian Bill Cosby. It ran on CBS on its first run syndication from 1972 to 1984, and the second run from 1984 to 1985.
Yeah, we're going back a few years, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was such a huge staple of the Saturday morning cartoon lineup while coming up. It was always so enjoyable to watch. Reason being that it was a wholesome show, like so many other shows at that time, that focused on teaching kids coming up at that time genuine life values and common sense with the aim of helping kids grow into kind, sensible adults.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, cartoons is a good one, huh?
Yeah. Because, it's definitely going to get the kids' attention. So you're hoping that they're watching something that's going to be beneficial.
It got ours.
And that was nice and most memorable aspect of this cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
So to set this up, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was about a group of urban inner city youngsters who learn, as we just mentioned, a series of valuable life lessons, all while hanging out together in their Philadelphia neighborhood.
Fat Albert was the designated leader of the neighborhood gang. More on the rest of the gang here in a bit. Now it's funny because, like, we have a friend that so reminds us of Fat Albert. Now, that is not an insult, but like this person, he is the live version of Fat Albert. Like, he looks like him.
He really does.
And he's just a big guy, big old nice guy, Kids love him. Everybody's friendly with him and everything. But, like, when you think about it, you're like, oh, he is Fat Albert.
Yeah, he does physically look like him for sure.
And he knows who he is. You're out there.
Yes. Nice observation there, Kennard.
Yes, and we're saying that all in good fun, all in good love.
Yes.
But back on topic, Fat Albert was so enjoyable to watch, and it was easy to get lost in the realistic stories and scenarios unfolding each week as we tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Cosby had a great interest in young people and their education, which he demonstrated in other genius works in entertainment for kids back then.
Can we say picture pages?
Oh, here we go.
I love me some picture pages. Picture pages, go and get your picture pages.
Oh, that was Coop's jam. Coop loved picture pages.
Yes, I did. So we'll have to think about doing that at another time because, I could go on and on about picture pages. So let's just move on.
Okay, Coop, we promise. I promise. Well, Bill Cosby was very instrumental in so much of our early education in recent years past. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was created, produced, and hosted in live action bookends, I might add too, by Mr. Cosby himself.
So Bill Cosby also provided voice talent to a number of the characters of the show. including the character Fat Albert. A fun fact. We mentioned just a second ago that Bill Cosby lent his voice talents to the majority of the characters in Fat Albert. But did you know that he also voiced and appeared as himself, Bill, hmm, as one of the gang? He also made the show warmly nostalgic, serving as its host.
Oh yeah, I so remember that. It did. It was like the whole package.
It was. It was.
Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids premiered in 1972 and ran for 8 seasons until 1985.
Mm-hmm.
So running a whopping 110 or so episodes. The production company for the cartoon is one that sponsored other famous throwback cartoon series, that being Filmation.
Oh, buddy. That production company visually is etched into my brain like hardcore.
Oh, yeah, you can totally see it now.
Yes, I can see and hear it instantly, right?
Yeah, that little xylophone noise is like.
Nice sound effects there, Kennard.
Thanks.
So nostalgia is an interesting phenomenon indeed.
It certainly is. Hence our fascination with it.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was heavily based on Bill Cosby's very own remembrance and fond recollections of his personal childhood gang that focused on Fat Albert and his friends' adventures.
Correct. And one of the standout things I liked about and remember well is that the show featured a valuable and educational lesson in every episode, which was highlighted by the live action host Bill Cosby in segments throughout the show. Hey, hey, hey. I'll work on that.
Okay.
That was Fat Albert's infamous catchphrase. We became instantly familiar with and deeply connected with the show.
So familiar, Coop. Let me give a crack at it. Hey, hey, hey. Yep, back to the drawing board. Oh, goodness, we're crazy.
Wow, yes.
But Coop, do you remember at the end of earlier episodes, the gang would typically come together in their North Philly junkyard?
Oh, of all places, yeah.
Yeah, the junkyard. And they would do this in order to perform a song on their cobbled together makeshift instruments, basically summarizing that episode's lesson learning via song.
I do remember that. That was one of the many familiar aspects of Fat Albert that we really did come to enjoy.
Yes.
It was baked in so well, we knew to anticipate it.
So now we've come to a point where we need to break down the working components of what Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids is, by now remembering and introducing the poignant individual members of the gang. So let's start off with Top Dog, Fat Albert himself.
Okay, Fat Albert was the main character in the series and usually touted as the honorary conscience of the gang. Just a bit ago, we made mention that the gangs frequently gathered and performed at the North Philly Junkyard because that's, of course, where kids are going to get together and play, and I'm sure their parents were fine with it.
Oh, totally. Wonderfully,
Yes.
totally. Yes.
Naturally. Well, it's obvious that they owned their cherished hangout and made it theirs. So, fun fact, the gang was literally called appropriately the Junkyard Gang. Their band was the Junkyard Band.
Oh my goodness. So remember that, Coop.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Another nice recollection.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that was easily detected by viewers was that Fat Albert was indeed very heavy set. But true to how so many of us kids back in the day were, Fat Albert may have been a very husky guy, we might say. Yet he was still athletic, running, playing ball, and doing all kinds of activities.
Mm-hmm.
But They were of humble means. They were poor. So the kids literally walked everywhere.
Yep. Another thing I miss from back when we were kids.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Another standout recollection concerning Fat Albert was his wearing a red shirt and blue pants or jeans.
Yes, he did, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Fat Albert was deemed civic minded and wise beyond his years. He worked very hard to maintain a sense of integrity amongst the gang, as well as others, which I felt was an enjoyable, overall positive vibe added to the show while we watched.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, fun fact, although we largely, no pun intended,
Oh, Coop.
I know bad timing, right?
No, actually, good timing. You're so bad.
So, refer to our star mostly as Fat Albert. Did you know that he, as well as others in his close knit gang, was assigned last or surnames?
Hmm.
Fat Albert's was Robertson. Fat Albert Robertson.
Nice. And we had previously mentioned that the gang was also a band,
Mhm.
the Junkyard Band. And Fat Albert served as the leader of the band, who sung on vocals, as well as crafted and played his homemade instrument that was more or less like a bagpipe accordion.
Mhm.
It was made from a funnel, a radiator, and airbag. So these guys may have been of humble means, but they used their genius. It was very ingenious.
Yeah.
He also plays a bed spring.
Hey, hey,
We're getting there.
hey. Not really. After all, that's what junkyards are for, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next on our list from the gang is James Mush, aka Mushmouth.
Mr. Mush.
Table for two, please.
The Mush Party.
Like the Fat Albert character, Bill Cosby also lent his voice talents to many other parts of the gang. Mushmouth was definitely one of them. So, Mushmouth was a slack jawed simpleton with big or larger lips. He was the character that wore his signature red knitted cap with the blue scarf.
Also part of the Junkyard Band, Mushmouth's instrument of choice is a homemade bass guitar.
It was. And one of the key standout traits connected to Mushmouth was that he always spoke in ooby dooby. Pretty funny, right?
Oh, yes. Because you could hear him.
So we can hear him literally talking, right now. So what's ooby dooby, you might ask? What did I just say? Fun fact, ooby dooby is a language game spoken with the English language originated in America in the 17th century.
How interesting.
Mhm.
Wow, never heard of this or that type of language or dialect. I didn't even know it even existed.
Interesting indeed. Ooby Dooby was highlighted back in the 70s on a PBS children's show called Zoom.
Oh, wow, look at that. Another Zoom.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, variations of Ooby Dooby include Obish, Ob, Ib, Arpy Darpy, and Is. That's IZ.
Oh, that is awful. Poor Mushmouth. So it sounded much like how one might sound in trying to talk properly after having had a bout of Novocaine after visiting the dentist. So speaking of dentists, Bill Cosby would use this language or spoof in some of his infamous comedy routines, but also was later used in The Dentist segment of his 1983 film entitled Himself. which is cool. So, next member of the Junkyard Gang to discuss is Dumb Donald.
So Dumb Donald Parker was true to his namesake and is described as a lanky, dim-witted personality. He was the best friend of another gang member we'll get into here shortly, that of Rudy. Dumb Donald wears a trademark green long-sleeved jersey, 3 sizes way too big, and his accompanied pink stocking knit cap covering his entire face, all but his eyes and mouth.
Okay, so I can see Dumb Donald in my mind's eye too right now.
So, in regards to his place in the friend group and his honorary spot in the Junkyard Band, Dumb Donald plays a trombone crafted from plumber's pipe and, according to our research, what is called a morning glory horn from an old phonograph or old school record player.
Hmm.
Yeah, fun fact. Much like so many of our past retro memories, Hollywood gets a brilliant idea.
I can sense some strong caramel sarcasm there, Coop.
Good then, Kennard. Message received. So the brilliant idea H-Town came up with was they made a feature film of the Fat Albert concept. In it, the character Dumb Donald, while appearing in the real world scenes, takes off his pink cap and discovers that he has a handsome face. Dumb Donald was voiced by Lou Scheimer.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for your sharing your caramel findings there, Coop.
Sure.
Now, let's hone in on the star and brainchild's character that is pivotal to the whole Fat Albert concept.
Okay.
So, we're going to talk about none other than the cartoon character of William, or rather, Bill Cosby himself. So, the real Bill Cosby voices his own character, and the real Bill Cosby also doubles as host of Fat Albert.
Mm-hmm.
His character, like the others, is a good athlete and enjoys playing sports as one of his favorite pastimes. Bill has another family member as part of his friend group that we'll get into next is Bill's younger sibling, and that is Russell Cosby.
I can see old Russell right now. That's too cute, too. That he made it, into and was allowed to pal around with the gang.
It was. But although this was a nice development for Russell, his being able to hang out with his big brother Bill and the gang was mostly and predictably by default.
Mm-hmm.
Bill's time was split in trying to have fun and roll with his friends and looking after little bro Russell.
So Bill spent most of his time trying to keep his little bro Russell out of trouble, although unsuccessfully, I might add.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the bane and frustrating charge of many an older sibling, right? AKA babysitting.
That's so funny, but wildly true.
Mm-hmm.
But Big Brother Bill was more often than not was the voice of reason for the gang, much like Fat Albert was. But Bill also had a bit of a stubborn side as well. So, as another key member of the Junkyard Band, Bill's choice instrument was homemade drums made out of discarded foot pedal trash can using spoons for sticks. Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
So when Bill wasn't enjoying his own time hanging with the gang or jamming it out with the band, he was in charge of Russell. Fun fact, Russell was actually based on Bill Cosby's real-life younger brother, whom he'd often include in his stand-up comedy routines. Russell is also the smallest and youngest member of the Junkyard Gang.
He has arrived. That Big Brother glue really worked.
Yes, yes. And no doubt he felt like it was a successful trip.
Yeah, because you could spot Russell in the gang very, very easily. One, he was the smallest member, aka short.
Oh no, vertically challenged, not that.
I know, right? But his attire was pretty distinctive too, though. So, number two, he always was nestled deeply in his heavy blue jacket, yellow scarf, red boots, and a dark blue winter hat he literally wore year round. That is simply adorable.
It is. That's cute. I'm also happy to say that Russell's personality was just as colorful as his outer attire, if not more so. Huh? He had quick wit and a knack for making snarky or snide remarks and for offering his unsolicited blunt observations pretty regularly.
Way to go, Russell.
Russell was hilarious. If memory serves me correctly, but I believe Rudy was his prime target.
Oh boy.
Especially when Rudy was being cocky. Had to put him on his place.
Yes, that's right.
Fun fact, one of Russell's favorite expressions or catchphrases is no class.
You got no class. You had no class. He was always nasal too, like his voice was up in his nose. So
Henri.
it was. And too, like this is so nostalgic, like so far every character we've talked about, we can hear or picture them.
Right?
So again, like with Russell, he's like, no class, it's that very distinctive voice, sounds like an annoying little brother.
Yes, yes. And they're like, you shouldn't even be here anyway, so shut up.
But Russell, like the rest of the group, he was part of the band, and he had him a custom instrument that he played too. So his instrument was a homemade xylophone that was made out of cans and a discarded coat rack. Hey, they didn't call him the Junkyard Band for nothing.
Right?
Yes, they want to be true to their moniker. So next on our list is Weird Harold Simmons.
Okay, yes. Now we're going to discuss Weird Harold Simmons. This character in the gang was a tall, lanky, beady-eyed kid who was actually the tallest member of the Junkyard Gang friend group. He's regularly seen sporting a gold dress blazer, a red sock on one foot, and a brown sock on the other. Oh my goodness. To top off his aesthetic, Weird Harold was clumsy.
Oh, wow. How alarming and familiar.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I say that is there's some parts of Weird Harold that sounds a lot like myself.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you're nuts, Kennard. So now the instrument Weird Harold plays is in the band is a harp crafted out of old bed springs, as well as occasionally plays a dressmaker dummy for the percussion section. So this is interesting. Fun fact. This character was frequently referenced in Bill Cosby's stand-up routines, calling him Old Weird Harold.
And Weird Harold, he was voiced by Gerald Edwards.
Okay.
So our next Junkyard Gang entry is a more familiar character. We mentioned him a minute ago, but that being Rude Rudy Davis, or Rudy. He was voiced by someone other than Bill Cosby. Rudy was voiced by Eric Sutter. So can totally see Rudy in my mind's eye right now.
Oh, me too. Oh, totally can see him. He had that classic, very 70s jive hip type of look.
He did.
He was sharp dressed, smooth talking, as well as being cocky huckster. whose smart aleck attitude often lands him in hot water.
Uh-oh.
Yes, he's also Dumb Donald's best homie, as mentioned earlier.
Rudy straight up reminds me of one of our aunts, one of our mom's younger sisters. Yeah, I mean, like the squinty eyes, everything, like dead ringer. Now, Rudy really did not only look like her, but maybe they were similar in personality and swagger as well. That 70s retro swagger.
Interesting perspective there, Kennedy. But back to Rudy. His cocky attitude and dismissive demeanor are often the reason or catalyst for a common show plot's conflict.
And even though Rudy had that tough, difficult exterior that audiences tuning in often got to witness, backstory is that deep inside, Rudy had a good heart and more often than not learns valuable lessons from his mistakes.
Fun fact, Rudy is portrayed entirely different in the movie than he was in the cartoon, where instead of his being the cocky, dismissive character, usually finding trouble like a magnet, in the film he is portrayed as a gentle, kind, and chivalrous guy who falls hard for the female lead in the film.
Okay, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Now, next character of interest is Bucky Miller, uh, voiced by Jan Crawford.
Okay.
So we may ask, why in the world is he called Bucky? Well, Bucky has a bit of an overbite.
Just a bit.
2 plus 2, right?
Yes.
But aside from that, Bucky is a quick and flexible athlete, and his instrument is a basic stovepipe organ in the band.
Haha. There were other notable characters highlighted in the show, like specific teachers and mentors like Miss Berry, Mrs. Breyfogle in later seasons, as well as Miss Walker. Fun fact, all three teachers are voiced by Jane Scheimer, wife of executive producer Lou Scheimer.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you said, other notable characters were Mudfoot Brown, whom Bill Cosby voiced. This character was a wise old vagrant who often gives the gang useful advice using reverse psychology to drive home his point he's trying to relate. Then there's the superhero, also voiced by Bill Cosby. He was the black superhero showcased in cartoons the Junkyard Gang watched on a regular basis.
So a cartoon within a cartoon. Sweet.
I know, right? But the Junkyard Gang absolutely loved and watched it. They were hardcore fans of, here's the superhero, the Brown Hornet.
Oh my goodness.
The Brown Hornet was predictably a parody of the Green Hornet, of course.
Oh, of course. So, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was always such a lively, inspiring media outlet that presented real life lessons and scenarios that encouraged thought and using common sense in figuring out what to do or say in order to get a desired outcome. This type of theme was baked in so much of the TV shows and cartoons back then when we were coming up.
It was.
Remember the added laugh track in some of the Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids episodes?
I do. And Coop, that was another weird but popular trend added to a lot of the cartoons back in the day.
It really was. It's like, you shouldn't have to, get your audience to, participate. If it's funny, they'll laugh, right?
Yeah, but that was wildly popular back then because you can think of a lot of examples that had that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But as you said, Cooper, that theme, as you described, baked into the entertainment so frequently was very, very common and nostalgic. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it's just part of stuff. So no harm, no foul, but you do remember it. And the subject and topics covered weren't all the smiles and rainbows variety.
Yeah.
But in Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, they tackled issues that faced the gang that they had to figure out of a deeper nature. Issues common to being a youth and coming of age, and
Hmm.
just a whole host of things. But you know, what was neat about this show was that they were living in a harder type of existence. Like they had an urban life and they had humble means. Like they were poor. There was just like, this was directed to part of the population that probably was really living this.
Yeah, yeah.
And this
And
was for them.
right, they were hanging out in a junkyard,
Mm-hmm.
for crying out loud. So it wasn't the park, it wasn't, some real nice swanky joint or anything like that. It's like, so obviously they were making do with what they had.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
appreciated that, because I mean they
yeah.
saw them. They felt, hopefully they felt seen and heard.
Right. So I do wonder if there was any kind of real connection to that part of the story. Like, is that something that they actually did? Because this is kind of built around his childhood. So I wonder if they did have a common place. Maybe it wasn't necessarily the junkyard, but maybe the junkyard was nearby where they actually hung out as kids.
I bet it was. I bet it was.
It'd be interesting to find
Mm-hmm.
out. So, this is true that we're having this conversation, and it's interesting to think about that.
Oh yeah.
So during each episode, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids frequently dealt with issues common to youngsters coming up at that time, that they naturally faced. Real, relatable issues such as medical operations, personal hygiene, that's always a good one to tackle.
Oh yeah.
Um, first loves, aka puppy crushes, and stage fright, just to name a few.
But this gem of an animated show didn't stop there. This show was bold in also tackling more serious themes like, vandalism, drug use, smoking, child abuse,
Mm,
and yeah, and of course it also touched on racism. I mean, it's
okay.
hard not to.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I do remember how well these topics were presented, though. It really did have our rapt attention, and always appreciated how well the creative execs finesse touching on these deeper topics.
So true. But two, one of the highlights of this show was how it both began and ended. So at the beginning of, you remember, Bill Cosby as host would pop up there and start the show out by saying, "This is Bill Cosby coming at you with lots of music and fun. And if you're not careful, you may learn something before it's done. So let's get ready, okay?" And then he goes into his Fat Albert voice. Hey, hey, hey.
We're going to nail this. I mean, before this week's show is over, we're going to get this, aren't we?
Maybe.
Good job. Well done. But at the end of most episodes, with of course some exceptions of the ones with the more serious theme subject matters,
Mhm.
the Junkyard Gang would bust out their homemade instruments and sing a song about that particular theme presented in the episode. So, one of their most famous jams connected to the show was the opening or coined Fat Albert's theme, "Gonna Have a Good Time," which was performed by Michael Gray.
So see, here we are. Good times indeed. Oh, goodness. Good times indeed. But it's not just the good memories and or opinion on how good and well received Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was in its prime. Get this. Fun fact. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids received an Emmy nomination in 1974.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. Also in 1993, TV Guide magazine named Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids the best cartoon series of the 70s.
Mm,
Yeah, that's kind of huge.
yes, it is.
And that was in the issue that was celebrating 40 years of television.
Mm, mm, mm.
So nice accolades to be had right there.
It certainly is. Bill Cosby was literally everywhere at that time, too, hand over fist. He was busy with so much in pop culture.
Uh-huh. So on that note, fun fact. did you know that production of the final season of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids actually overlapped with the start of production of Bill Cosby's ever famous live action sitcoms of the 80s? And that was The Cosby Show, which began airing, in the fall of 1984 on the NBC network.
Crazy cool, Coop. Wow. I mean, like, we're talking about this and you so go back there. Like, it seemed like yesterday.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Ugh. Well, one more thing to highlight about Fat Albert before we tap out of our fascinating show this week is how this most fun, amazing cartoon retro blast tapped on the shoulder of Hollywood's recent remake of All Things Wonderful and Retro Tech. Is noted in the year 2004, a feature film was released entitled Fat Albert.
Oh, wow. There were some think tanks on that one.
I know, right? It was presented by 20th Century Fox.
Okay.
So it was a close adaptation of the live action animated series of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
Did you see it?
No, did not.
I did not either.
Whoops.
Yeah, okay. So the movie acts as a sequel for our showcase retro cartoon, where the Junkyard Gang journeys into the real world after jumping out of the TV in order to help the female lead, Doris, a lonely girl who struggles with social anxiety.
Now, there's a notable nod or mention here that's touching on a serious, very real type of issue experienced by many.
Indeed, Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the guys of the gang enjoy being in and part of the real world temporarily, but upon running into and meeting their creator, Bill Cosby, Albert learns his dilemma in that if he and the others do not return to TV world whence they originally came, like immediately, well, they would turn into celluloid dust.
Sounds interesting.
Right?
But again, we haven't actually seen it, so.
Mm-hmm.
But, let's inquire of the Orchard Archivers, if they've seen the 2004 feature film, or were they even fans and cherished memories of watching the retro cartoon, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, let us know, Orchard Archivers, because I mean, like a lot of retro memories, they take you back. It's just that warm fondness that, man, you just feel like you're a kid again.
You really do, less, I don't know, just when you're a kid, there's just other things that are on your mind, whether it's just playing, maybe it's nap time, milk time, whatever. It's just a little different. Not saying every kid had a cherry childhood, but
Right.
still when you're a kid, your parents do try to shield you from a lot of what you deal with as an adult. So yeah, generally you can pull up some good memory, at least one from your childhood.
Yeah, and that's, as we always have said, in the past in our podcast, that's been our personal experience. So.
Right.
Coop, this was a wonderful retro throwback to openly consider this week.
I agree.
It's so amazing how we deep dive into these nostalgic topics really do effortlessly take us back. I love that.
Well, what can we say?
One more time, all right.
Love what you heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. To tune into future treks into the Orchard Archives, meet up with us here next week. Same time, same place at the Sweet Spot. And it would mean the world to us if you would leave us a shiny review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and explore more iconic memories. Thank you.